Okay, first job, deal with the rescue ferns. Black pot for these, I don't need to see the roots. And I put some large bark in the bottom to stop the media clogging up the holes and getting too soggy. Now we don't see this very often. This is coarse peat. And this is Cornish grit. That's for some drainage. Just a sort of semi-gritty mix. You can go a bit more. Because although I want this to stay moist for the fern, what I don't want it to do is stay totally soggy with no air in it. So that will do. Put some in the bottom. Now we've got one little root with sign of a new growth coming, so there's a new frond about to come out of there, possibly here too, and quite a long dangly root system which I'll just spread out so that it's not all bunched up together. That way it can find its way round in the pot. Just dangle that in there like that. And the other little piece, which is the same type of fern, has got hardly any roots, so it may not grow, but we've got to give it a chance. And certainly getting it in some suitable media gives it a better chance than it was sat on the bark, which is not that ideal, shall we say. Oh, fiddly. I'm trying not to break the fronds because they're very fragile. Might have been better to have put the media in and then made a hole and pushed the fern down into it, but we'll try it this way. At least this way the long roots on the larger piece get right down into the pot and not sort of all bunched up together in the middle of the pot, so they can spread out. I don't need to press this down and turn it into concrete, it just needs to be firm enough to hold the plant upright. Just, not forcing anything. And then it will water in when I water it. Reasonably firm around the outside, because as we all know, roots always seem to migrate to the outside of the pot. So once they get there, they've got something nice and firm to get into. Both pieces in there? Yep, the little piece is just low enough. See now with this, if the base of the plant is slightly below, it doesn't matter that much. Like it would with an orchid, just need it covered just about. That will do. Now I did that first because that's like a dirt thing, so I can now get my hands washed off and get that out of the way and get my little mixing dish cleaned up. So that was just a mix of peat, that can go out of the way, and grit, just to give some drainage and some movement. So that's that little one done. I hope they grow. I hope that grows. I was mucking about with Lynn when I bought the plant because she put it in the auction with a reserve and it didn't sell. And I ummed and ahed, and in the end I went up afterwards and I said, you don't want to take that Dendrobium home, do you? And she, in a sort of cross voice, said, no I don't, I want the space. And I said, well I'll give you the reserve for it. So I bought it, and I was joking with her. I said, I don't really want the Dendrobium, I just want the fern. Some people don't know whether to take me seriously sometimes. Anyway, that's the little fern done. Right, so get the Keikis done now. That is a larger amount than the current plant is actually on, but I'm looking at the rate of growth. You know, this is the growth this year so far, and we're only halfway through, so it's good. The plant's going to expand at quite a rate. So even though I'm only planting Keikis, I'm going to give them room to grow. And then whoever has this has got some actively growing Keikis, which I'm teasing off at the moment. This kills two birds with one stone because it will tidy my own plant up. Yeah? So removing the Keikis off the ends of the canes will make the plant look a little tidier. I don't know how many I'm going to get. Some of these are a bit small really, but they've got roots. Yep, they're coming off. Tiny though they are, and fiddly like they're going to be to try and attach, it's still worth having a go. What have we got in here? There's a couple in there. It's going to be a lot, so it's going to be a lot of individual plants on one single mount. But these are not bad plants, not bad size at all. How are we doing? I'm going to leave that section there because its roots are getting down onto the mount. So that just leaves these couple out here. These are the larger ones really. Come on, let go. Thank you. And that one. The amount of roots on that tiny little plant. Well, if it will come off without damaging the base, then it will grow. And that, you know, came off nice. I mean, that's going to be fiddly. Right, so what have we got left? Yeah, well, that section over there, the roots are going down onto the mount, so that becomes part of the main plant. Yeah, I'll leave a few on. But these are the canes I'm interested in, the new canes growing from the base. That's next year's blooms coming on here. Yeah, so put that to one side. Go back out in the grow room. Now this is going to be fiddly. I don't like putting the moss on first, but if I don't put the moss on first, I really am going to have serious trouble trying to get these to stay put. So I think this is how I've done it for years and years. It's only recently I've changed my mind and started putting the roots on, the moss on after the plant, so that it can be removed. But this doesn't need a lot of moss. It only needs a little bit. And by the time this moss starts to break down, the plant will be incredibly well established. And teasing the old moss out shouldn't be too much of a big deal. That's my theory anyway. Chances are it won't be my problem, it'll be somebody else's. You know, the idea is that this goes to somebody else, so somebody else has got a lot of Jessii to grow on. And the fact that it's starting off as lots of little plants should look like a mature plant very quickly, even though it's made up of lots of little ones. But I want to get some space in between them so that they do, as they grow on, they fill them out, rather than all being stuck in the middle and having to work their way to the edges. So I'm covering up a reasonable bit. Right, now for the hard bit. What I'm going to do is get a piece that's quite long, and I may need two pieces for once, simply because if it's too long it'll get on my nerves and get in my way as I'm trying to wind. I may get it done in one, but I'm going to take a piece off. If I get told off by anybody, I will put the loop on first. and in this case, excuse me, it really does make sense to put the loop on first. More coffee. Right, and we'll start near the top and just grab a hold like that, and then we can make a start. And I'm just going to do these one plant at a time basically, and that way they should be nicely spread out. So I'm not going to try and put moss over the top of the roots. I'm going to sit them on the moss. That way the roots will grow into the moss. So one loop at a time. That's one. I'll pull that tight in a minute. Oh, some of these are tiny, but so be it. And I'll do two at once now. Do a big one and a little one, or littler one. The idea being that by the time I've finished, I've got little plantlets all over the mount, and they will all nicely grow on then. So those two, that's got those. I need something to hold that still. Something a bit heavy. That's got it, because it's going loose as I let go. We have another couple going out the side. How many have I got left? Otherwise I'm not going to have any for the lower portion. Let's do another 2. That leaves me with 4, including some very, very small ones. Right, next loop. Right there. These are only getting 1 loop because these are going to attach very fast. Little root systems like this, providing this moss stays hydrated, these are going to take off like little rockets. Right, that's another 2 there, and then the last 2 can go right down the bottom. Gotcha. And these are tiny. They can bring up the rear from the base. Gotcha. Now that's it. I'm only putting 1 loop around each plant because that's all it's going to need. It doesn't need lots of help because the roots are going to attach incredibly quickly. The only thing I have got to do is I have got to go round again because my knot is up the top of the mound, not down the bottom. So I'll just find a place so that I can just go back round and get to the top. Oh, just about enough. Did it in 1. Jolly good. Right. That's a nice little mountful of Lodogessii for somebody down the line a bit. I'd like to see those roots pushing on and starting to attach and everything before it tries to put up with some transport. So that's that done. They're quite evenly spaced. Yeah. So we've got a couple down the bottom, some pointing out towards the sides, and some to bring up through the centre. So when those start to grow and start to fill out and start pushing out more canes from the base, that will probably end up bigger than my plant in, say, 2 years, something like that. That should grow on at a good rate or not. So that's that little one done. I'm going to get these little restrepia Keikis done. They're all going in 1 pot. This one has a new growth coming, 2 leaves and some reasonable roots. What else we got? This one's quite a nice little plant. I don't see any signs of new growth on it at the moment, but it's got a reasonable root system. This one's dubious whether it's going to grow or not. It's only got 1 leaf, but what it has got is a bud that's about to open, so I'm going to plant it in the pot anyway. It's got roots, and it's got a clean base. I mean, it may well shoot out. And then the larger one, which will be the mainstay of the plant, this one's even got a Keiki growing on it, but at the moment it's got no roots, so I'm just going to leave it on there. At some point down the line, if it grows roots, it can be detached. Just tidy up that old growth. And that's about it. So we have a pot full, and I'm literally going to gather these together. They're all going in the centre of the pot. And then I can hold them all together and just drop it in the pot. Where's that new growth? Try and get that on the outside, or pointing towards the outside. That's the one with the bud. I'll point that outwards as well. And that's it. That's a gathering. So they're all going to be held like that. All the bases are, except that one, which was a bit high, are at the same level. So just make sure those roots are in. I suppose I better put some media in first, don't I? Come on, concentrate. Now this has actually got quite a high percentage of moss in it, and that's deliberate. These are Keikis. The plants themselves, restrepias, need to stay constantly moist. Yeah? And this has got to put up with transport. So it's getting extra moss to get young plants up and running. many hands have I got here? Not enough. Now with restrepias, if the base of the plant is slightly below the media, it's not the end of the world, but it pays not to bury it. If you can just see the base of the plant, that's about the right depth. It doesn't need to stick right out of the ground though, like some other types of orchids where you pot high because the bases are prone to rotting. Well, these aren't. These come from incredibly humid areas where they're constantly soaking wet, basically. They never get dry. But don't forget there's always air movement. Those montane forests may be constantly shrouded in mist and fog, but that air is moving up the hillside all the time. The air moves, so it's never still. Not like the sort of fog you get in the UK where it just hangs in the air. It's not that sort of environment at all. So that's it. They've all got some roots in that media, and at the moment that media is quite loose. As soon as I pour water all over it, it will sink down in. So that's that little lot done. Yeah, I was just going to say, I thought I did get a pot. For the big plant, that's just going to go in back in exactly the same size pot as it was in before. But I know already that I haven't got anywhere near enough media to fill that pot, so I'll have to knock up a bit more. Is that going to be enough? Give a bit of a pot, that should be enough by the time I've added the moss in. Again, I'm a bit heavier on the moss with these types of plants than on some others. The Masdevallias and the Restrepias, I like to have some bark in there to allow some air around, even though it's the small grade bark. But I do go heavy on the moss, and it just stops them drying out so fast. It saves me work. I mean, a lot of people grow them in pure moss. They'll grow fine in pure moss. No reason why not. I find that if the moss is mixed with bark, it lasts longer. If it's pure moss, it breaks down faster. That's just in my experience in my environment. So that's quite a good percentage of moss. That's not bad. Right, where's my plant? It's quite a big plant, this one. Now this one's got some Keikis up round the top, which at the moment I'm going to leave. They need to come off really. Give the plant a chance to get going at the base. Right. And this is just a matter of holding the plant near the centre. Don't need to worry about where new growth's coming out on these, because it comes out all over the place. Doesn't just come out around the edge of the plant or off in one direction, it can come straight up through the middle. It will come out from all directions. So these tend to need to be potted up centrally. It's not central at the moment, but that's because I want to push against the media I've just pushed in, so it is now. Very fine root system on this, and you might think it's fragile, but it's not. It might be very, very thin and incredibly sturdy. They don't break very easy at all. So not all things that are thin and flimsy are fragile. And then you get some other plants. You get some cattleyas, you know, great big chunky sturdy roots, and as you're repotting it you break half a dozen because they're brittle. So they're not flimsy, but they're brittle. Now, these aren't. They're bendy, flexible and sturdy. So we can give that a good press down in. Are we deep enough? Yes. Yeah, I need to do a bit of trimming around the base there. There's a few old growths that are leafless that have died back that need trimming off now. Now I can see them. And a few Keikis in places that I'd rather just take off. You know, like that one. you'd have a job to get that to grow. But that's done, so that's the restrepia done. Okay, I split the Dendrobium, and as discussed, and what I've got here is half of the plant. This has got no active roots on it and no signs of new growths. So, and it's also only got 2 leaves on 1 cane, and all the other canes are leafless. So this is obviously a very old part of the plant. Now this may rejuvenate, so I am going to pot it, but it's going to take a while. I mean, if it pushes up 2 or 3 new canes, then it'll save itself. But I'm not worried too much about that part of the plant. The important part of the plant is this bit. Obviously this is the one with all the leaved canes. These canes were in bloom when I bought it, and I did say we've got 2 nice new growths coming here. Having got the media off the base of the plant, there's another one coming here. So it's got growths in several places. So those are the new canes to push on. These roots are not bad, and there are some new growing tips on those roots. So that's what I'm going to pot. I may have to just strap that to get it to stand upright, but until I get it in the pot, I don't know whether it's going to stay upright on its own. Now that's quite a large pot. I'd prefer a smaller one, but it won't be stable, and I'd probably have a job to get the root system in there. And it is growing new growths which will push out new growths which will push out new roots. I put some larger bark in the bottom. I'm just going to get these to tease in. Now it's going in the pot. The pot doesn't look quite so big as I at first thought. And this pot is incredibly smaller than what it was in, which is what I wanted to achieve. Right, now I've got 1 new growth this side, but 2 that side. So I need that reasonably central. And if I've got a few air gaps on this, it doesn't matter because it's a Dendrobium. Yeah, they need air around their roots, and in the main they need to dry, almost at least. Quite honestly, what I do with these types of Dendrobiums is during the growing season I don't let them dry out completely, but I do let them get almost dry, yeah, and then I give them a hell of a soak. But by just potting it in bark with nothing else, during the winter time I can minimise the amount of water I put in so that they can be totally dry, and then I can trickle some in if that's the type of orchid it is that needs to stay almost dry. Don't know about this one, I haven't looked it up yet. I don't need to, it's not winter yet. But come the winter time I'll have to put this in one of my Dendrobium sets, one of which is the dry cool winter rest type, which this may well be, but at the moment I don't know, and quite honestly I'm not even fussed, because it doesn't matter. This is the growing season, and this one is coming into active growth, plus it's got a lot of leaved canes to support, so it's going to need moisture. So this time of year, excuse me, ow, not owl sneeze, owl back. Anything that's jolting my back at the moment is ouch, ouch. And then once I've done this one, I'm not going to film potting the other one because it's only a repeat of what I'm doing now. I'm actually going to have a long soak in a hot bath, put some of my cream on my back, get myself some food and perhaps a glass of wine depending on what time it is, and I'm going to sit in a chair and I'm not going to move, and I am going to try the total rest. I've still got to go around the grow room with the sprayer, but that's just sort of standing around and pointing a sprayer, that's not a big deal. But today we're bad, and quite honestly if it's this bad tomorrow I may actually go and see the doctor, because it's been dragging on a long time and I've had enough of it. Oh, that's good, that's nice and sturdy in the pot. Excellent, so I don't need to stake it, and hopefully that can go back on the shelf it was on, and this time not touch the top of the shelf, because this pot's only half as tall as the previous one. So that's it. new growths out of the media, yeah. And the other one, which was a bit lower on the plant, if I can find it again, I'm just going to tease the media away from that, because that's a little bit lower down that side of the pot. Media doesn't have to be the same height all round the pot. It can have different heights for different reasons. Okay, that's it. That's good and firm in there. There's a few air gaps, but not many, and I'm happy with that. I may actually just tie those together gently. I don't need it, but it would take up less space if I did. But it looks a lot... Hang on, let's get the camera down. It actually looks quite a nice plant now. It's got quite a nice even spread about it. Tying it in together is not necessary. I'll see how it fits on the shelf when I get it out there. But yeah, I mean, that's nice and stable in its pot, because it's a very, very tall plant. Give that a good soak now, and set that up, get the label back in, and I'll do the other piece, but quite honestly I'm not holding out a lot of hope for that. But it could rejuvenate itself. It will have an awful lot of reserves in those large canes, and if those reserves can start some new growths without a good root system, then the root system will come later and it may rejuvenate itself. And if it does, it's never going to look as good as this one, because all the canes on the older part of the plant have already become deciduous. They're not going to change, obviously. They could still produce some spikes though, so they're not written off. Anyway, that's that session done. Now I need to sort me out. That's the orchids done. Now next priority is sorting me out, because I'm just not right today. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.